So you're here for the insights, the stuff that really matters, without all the overwhelming noise.
Exactly.
That's what this deep dive is all about. Today, we're really zeroing in on these recent trade moves between the U.S. and China.
Big topic.
Huge. And our guides, well, they're the perspective shared in that YouTube discussion, La Tormenta Trump.
Yeah, on the Mookie Tenenbaum channel, it was Mookie himself talking with Horacio Quebec.
Right. And our mission here is pretty simple. Pull out the key knowledge you need from their analysis to really get what's going on without getting bogged down.
And timing is interesting here. That chat between Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Quebec happened just after Trump decided to freeze those tariff hikes.
Oh, right.
But he also announced new tariffs on China. This was around Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. So their takes are really immediate.
Yeah, fresh off the press, basically. And Mookie Tenenbaum kicks things off. He tells Horacio this memorable little story.
Oh, the rabbinical one.
Yeah, about the goat, trying to fit a goat in a tiny apartment.
Seems random, but...
But Mookie's point to Horacio was, it's actually a perfect analogy for what Mookie sees as Trump's strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Create a big problem in the tariff. Right. Then ease up a bit, freeze the increases.
Okay. So you create relief, maybe even some gratitude, and definitely leverage.
Exactly. That's how Mookie framed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mookie Tenenbaum, talking with Horacio Quebec, he stresses you got to see this initial move in a wider historical frame.
Goes back further.
Right. He steps back to Bretton Woods post-World War II.
Okay.
Now, Bretton Woods, that was basically the foundation for, the whole post-war global economy.
Mm-hmm.
And Mookie's point is a huge part of that was the U.S. getting rid of its tariffs to help global recovery.
While others kept theirs.
Oh, many others kept theirs. Yeah, that's the historical piece Mookie brings up.
And, Mookie Tenenbaum points out, reflecting on Trump's views, which go way back.
To the 80s, even.
Yeah, exactly. He reminds Horacio that Trump saw this as the U.S. basically footing the bill for wealthy nations.
Subsidizing them,
paying for defense, and not getting fair trade in return. It's, according to Mookie's analysis anyway, a really consistent theme for Trump.
And what's really insightful, I think, from Mookie Tenenbaum's chat with Horacio Quebec is his read on Trump's bigger strategy.
Okay, what's the endgame there?
Mookie reckons Trump is trying to force a global reset, a situation where it's either everyone has tariffs or...
Well, nobody does.
Or ideally nobody does. That's what Mookie suggests Trump prefers. And he also flags the urgency Trump probably feels.
Because of midterm.
Yeah, limited time before potential midterm losses could, change the political game for him.
Makes sense. And as Mookie Tenenbaum lays out for Horacio Quebec, Trump's first move was slapping on these tariffs.
While warning others not to retaliate.
Right, especially China. He basically said, don't you dare, or he'd go higher.
But as Mookie explains to Horacio, China didn't blink.
They hit back.
They hit back hard. Mookie mentions, I think, an 84% hike in their tariffs. Which, as they discuss, is what triggered Trump's next move, pushing U.S. tariffs up to, a massive 125%.
So a rapid escalation.
Very rapid. Mookie and Horacio really analyzed that back and forth, creating this super tense economic standoff.
Okay, so that brings us to now. And Mookie Tenenbaum tells Horacio Quebec we're in this 90-day window.
The pause,
yeah. No more tariff increases for now. The idea being this is time for negotiation.
And Trump's ultimate goal, in Mookie's view.
A world without tariffs. That's what Mookie believes Trump is aiming for, thinking it leads to this, explosion in global trade where everyone benefits fairly.
Mookie Tenenbaum also pointed out a key detail to Horacio Quebec, didn't he? About China initially being left out.
Yeah, they weren't part of that 90-day suspension at first.
And Mookie said Trump's reasoning, when asked, was basically about Chinese pride.
Pride? How so?
The idea Mookie relayed was, China would be more likely to seek negotiations themselves rather than look like they're caving under pressure if they were just included automatically. Strategic, maybe?
Interesting angle. Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Quebec then use this analogy, an economic arms race.
Yeah, helps clarify things. Both the U.S. and China were just piling on tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
But, and Mookie really stresses this, their ability to sustain that kind of fight, it's not equal.
How so?
Well, this is a crucial point Mookie Tenenbaum makes, talking with Horacio Quebec. China just exports way, way more to the U.S. than the U.S. exports to China.
Oh, okay, so the same percentage hurts them more.
Exactly. Significantly more pain for the Chinese economy from these high tariffs. That's central to their analysis.
And Mookie Tenenbaum also brings up, for Horacio Kabak, Trump's view that the U.S. holds some pretty powerful cards here.
What kind of cards?
Military strength, for one, but also control over things like Visa and MasterCard, the payment system.
Right, global system.
And the Federal Reserve's role, lending dollars globally. Huge leverage points, according to Mookie.
Following that, Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Kabak touched on that rather provocative quote attributed to Trump.
Oh, the one about world leaders.
Yeah, about them kissing his ass. As Mookie and Horacio sort of reflected, that kind of talk, it could definitely make negotiations trickier.
Pride getting in the way again.
Exactly, especially with national pride on the line.
It's funny, perspectives change, but Horacio Kabak brought up that old Trump tweet. Remember that? From way back, December 2014.
Vaguely. What did it say?
Trump basically declared deal-making was his art form, his idea of fun.
Huh. Well, that certainly lines up with Mookie Tenenbaum's current analysis of Trump treating this whole trade thing like a big negotiation.
Seems consistent.
Now, shifting gears a bit to the immediate fallout, Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Kabak noted those big stock drops.
Yeah, right after the tariff news.
Major U.S. companies, they named Tesla, Apple, Microsoft specifically, dropped significantly in just, 4 days?
That's fast.
Mookie drew a pretty stark comparison to the shock when the pandemic first hit. Just shows the speed and scale of the market's reaction this time.
But Mookie Tenenbaum also pointed out a key difference to Horacio Kabak compared to the pandemic crash.
What was that?
The VIX. The volatility index, the market's fear gauge.
Right.
It went up, sure, but it didn't spike to those crazy highs we saw in early 2020.
Interesting. So Mookie's interpretation.
He kind of read it as maybe the big players didn't totally panic. Maybe some saw it as a temporary dip, maybe even a buying opportunity.
And Mookie Tenenbaum used TSMC as an example, right?
Yeah.
Taiwan Semiconductor.
Yeah, their stock dropped quite a bit too.
And as Mookie and Horacio discussed, that seemed, maybe illogical, given that the demand for their chips is still sky high.
Just shows how general anxiety can ripple out, I guess.
Yeah, leads to maybe some irrational selling across the board.
But then came the announcement about the 90-day pause. And Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Kabak saw the markets.
Rebound, yeah, especially the U.S. and Latin American markets still open for trading.
Suggests some relief, maybe a recalculation of the immediate risks.
Definitely a sigh of relief. However, Mookie Tenenbaum did sound a note of caution when talking to Horacio Kabak. He voiced some skepticism about China just, rolling over and conceding easily.
Okay.
And Mookie raised a pretty concerning possibility.
Which is?
That China, feeling the squeeze from its own internal economic problems, might consider doing something more aggressive towards Taiwan.
Wow, like a diversion or leverage.
Could be either, yeah. A way out of their economic corner, potentially. That's the scenario Mookie flagged.
And speaking of internal problems, Mookie Tenenbaum went into some detail with Horacio Kabak about the challenges inside China right now.
What kind of things?
He mentioned real estate values basically being cut in half.
Ouch.
And local governments struggling to pay their bond debts, issues that Mookie noted add up to a really significant chunk of China's GDP. Big internal pressure.
And digging into China's situation, Mookie Tenenbaum shared his view with Horacio Kabak about the purpose of the Chinese military.
What's his take?
He argues its main focus isn't really foreign invasion, it's more about internal control.
Keeping order at home.
Exactly. Mookie suggests the Communist Party's biggest fear isn't necessarily external threats, but mass unemployment.
Because of exports drying up?
Right. If export issues lead to widespread job losses, that could directly threaten the party's grip on power. That's Mookie's analysis.
So as Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Kabak looked at the big picture, they talked about how Trump's moves are being seen, right? The different interpretations.
Oh, the contrast.
Mookie acknowledged, a lot of people see Trump's approach as chaotic, maybe irrational even.
That's a common view.
But Mookie personally leans towards the idea that Trump is actually operating with a clear strategy, trying to force these trade negotiations.
A deliberate plan, even if it looks messy.
That's Mookie's take.
And Mookie Tenenbaum also tackled that potential counter-argument with Horacio Kabak, the idea that easing up on tariffs, even temporarily,
might look like weakness.
Exactly. Could be seen as backing down. But Mookie's view is different.
How does he see the 90 days?
He frames it as a real, genuine opportunity for other countries to come to the table and negotiate these zero-tariff deals with the U.S.
And are countries interested?
Apparently, yes. Mookie mentioned quite a few. Japan, South Korea, Israel, India. Something like 90 countries in total have already expressed interest, according to him.
90? Wow. Okay. So looking ahead then, Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Quebec expect a sort of round two.
Yeah, a next phase. And they think it'll probably focus on non-tariff barriers.
The trickier stuff.
Much trickier. Mookie gave examples like EU restrictions on U.S. chicken or cars.
Right.
And he emphasized that China's non-tariff barriers are even more significant and deeply embedded, often needing actual laws to be changed.
So much more complex than just adjusting tariff numbers.
Way more complex. Mookie shared this funny little anecdote with Horacio Quebec about the reaction in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, some people there were hoping their duty-free shops would get a big boost from all this.
Seriously? Duty-free?
Yeah. Which, in Mookie's view, just showed a complete misunderstanding of the massive scale of the economic forces at play here.
Kind of missing the forest for the trees there.
You could say that.
So, wrapping up his chat with Horacio Quebec, Mookie Tenenbaum basically doubled down on his main point.
Which was?
That Trump's actions, yeah, they might be confusing leaders around the world, but Mookie sees it as masterful, part of a defined, effective strategy.
Okay, so if we boil down the key insights from Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Quebec for you, the listener.
What are the main takeaways?
All right, first, Trump's using tariffs strategically as leverage, pushing for a zero-tariff world. That's Mookie's core argument.
Got it.
Second, we saw that immediate market shock, but it wasn't sustained panic and it rebounded. Volatility, yes, but maybe calculated.
Okay.
Third, China is facing real significant internal economic heat, which complicates their response and could lead to unexpected moves.
Right. The Taiwan point Mookie raised.
Exactly. And fourth, get ready for round two, focusing on those thorny non-tariff barriers. That's the next likely battleground.
And it's crucial, as Mookie Tenenbaum really stressed with Horacio Quebec, to at least consider that these moves are part of a long-term strategy.
Even if that's not what most analysts are saying right now. Keep an open mind on the interpretation.
Right.
Which kind of leads us to a final thought, something for you to chew on. Thinking about this potential big shift, maybe towards zero tariffs like Trump envisions and Mookie and Horacio analyzed.
Yeah.
How might that really reshape the whole global economic map? Not just U.S., China, but everything.
Who wins? Who loses?
Exactly. Which countries, which industries do you think might come out on top in the long run? And who might face the biggest hurdles in that kind of new world order?
Definitely something to think about. Well, we really appreciate you diving deep with us today, sorting through these perspectives from Mookie Tenenbaum and Horacio Quebec.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And as Horacio Quebec might wrap it up, we'll catch you next time.